Hello, my dear friends. You're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 30th of July. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, we're going to talk about the report of Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. They gave us a lot of interesting information, a lot of important updates, and the most important update came today from Donetsk area, from the northwest of this area. We know that during the previous days there was and there are still very heavy clashes all along the front line. The Russians are pushing towards Marinka, towards Krasnogorovka, towards Pesky, towards Avdiivka. They want to crack this nut, and this is the most fortified positions, and everybody understands as soon as the area on the northwest from Donetsk falls, we can start counting days before the entire Donbas Arc operation is going to end, because this is the vital area for both parties of this conflict. We know that the Ukrainians have had a lot of losses in this area. The Russians were hunting for this 54th Mechanized, for their headquarters, for this 56th Mechanized Brigade, and the active phase of offensive operation has started. So that's why the Ukrainians decided to reinforce this area, to bring more forces here, because they understand that they can't lose this bridgehead. Because using this bridgehead, the Ukrainians have possibility to shell Donetsk, to mine Donetsk on distance, and so on. So this is the vital area for them. And the Ukrainians sent very powerful brigade, the first President Brigade. It has the name like President Brigade, so I suppose that this President Brigade is the most well-equipped, heavy equipped. They have a lot of armored vehicles, they're well trained, and so on. So this brigade came to this town, Krasnoarmeysk. If we are talking about this map, if we take a look at the Russian sources map, this town has the name of Pokrovsk, this town. And in this town is very famous because somewhere near this town the Russians destroy some HIMARS and other headquarters of other forces. So as a result of that attack, the Russians killed around more than 140 soldiers of that President Brigade, and around 250 soldiers from this brigade were wounded. And also the Russians said that every single armored vehicle that were brought to this town was destroyed by that attack as well. They didn't provide any numbers, but I suppose that there were a lot of forces, a lot of armored vehicles, so the reinforcing of the north of Donetsk has fallen, has collapsed by the Russians' artillery or rocket attack. Another important update about the rocket attacks came from this area, from the area between Artyomovsk, Seversk, from this Donbas Arc operation, the main theater of the battlefield. The Russians still continue hunting the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, this one today. During the previous 24 hours, they destroyed the headquarters of this brigade. These poor guys, they are hunted by the Russians during, I suppose, like for the last months. If you take a look at this map, you're gonna see that there is some changes on the front line, the south from Artyomovsk. As you can see, from now on, this area is under protection just of 72nd Mechanized Brigade. We see that we don't see the 13th Mechanized Brigade in this area anymore. The Ukrainians moved this brigade to the back. This is their main position. They moved this brigade to reinforce, to regroup, to fulfill with the fresh blood. Because if you remember, yesterday they announced that during these days the Russians made a critical damage to this brigade, so that brigade lost their combat capability. And as soon as they told us, as you can see, this map has been updated, and now there is no more 13th Brigade on this front line, and this brigade was totally moved from this area to the back. I suppose that there is no more 13th Mechanized Brigade. This brigade was destroyed to ruins, I suppose. Another important update are coming from this area, from Artyomovsk. The Ukrainians are moving more and more forces to this area, and the Russians are striking this area. If you take a look at the Russian sources map, there is some icons. The 14th Mechanized Brigade, the main position of this Mechanized Brigade is in Odessa, Nikolaev area, Kherson district. I suppose few battalions were sent there to reinforce the forces in near Bakhmut. And as a result of that attack, this mechanized brigade lost around 50 soldiers. So the Russians are continue hunting the forces mechanized brigade in this area as well. Another important update came today from 110th Brigade. This brigade is located on the north of Donetsk, this one, and their base, they have a lot of bases, a lot of places where they have their forces and troops and equipment and so on. The Russians attacked this town, Yasnobrodovka, this one, and as a result of that attack, the Ukrainian lost around 30 soldiers in this area. As you can see, this is the same region on the north of Donetsk, so the Russians are trying to reduce the Ukrainians as much as possible, because they achieved significant success on the north of Donetsk, if we can talk like this. They didn't establish control over entire area, but they took the most difficult trenches, the most difficult checkpoints in this area, and they're taking block by block and meter by meter. And I suppose that the Russians started doing their job, and I suppose that soon this entire front line is going to collapse. Now we will discuss another important update about the losses. The National Battalion Kraken lost around 30 soldiers in the Kharkiv district. On the west from Kharkiv, there was some kind of their rotation base, and as a result of that attack, this brigade lost around 30 soldiers as well. So this is not a very good day for the Ukrainians. These previous 24 hours wasn't very good for the Ukrainians. Now let's talk about the movements and updates on the map. As I see, we got a lot of reports from Bakhmut, Seversk area, a lot of updates, and as I see, the entire front line is collapsing very slowly, but we can see the result of this. Today by the evening we got report that Ukrainians, under the push, under the pressure of the Russians from Ugledarska power plant, from Novolugansk, from the north, the forces in Semigorye decided to leave this area. Of course, we understand, because if you take a look at this map, this area is under protection just of 72nd Mechanized Brigade, and the 13th left this position, so I suppose that Ukrainians just don't have forces to hold this bridgehead. So that's why the Ukrainians left Semigorye, or at least they're trying to do this right now. Another important update are coming from the south, because as we discussed, because of lack of forces, the Ukrainians, there are very heavy clashes in Travnevo. So the Russians start to attack these bridgehead, the south, Travnevo, Glodasova, and as you can see, as we see, the Russians have the biggest success in this area. So I suppose that very soon this entire front line south is going to collapse, and the Ukrainians will leave not just Semigorye or Travnevo, they will leave Kadema, Dacho, Glodasova. We got another important update that the Russians managed to clear Vershina, and now there are very heavy clashes in Zaitsevo and in Veselaya Dolina, this one. So as you can see, if we take a look at Veselaya Dolina, the distance from Veselaya Dolina towards Bakhmut is just 2 kilometers. So that's why from this area the Russians will be able to start shelling and reducing the south of Bakhmut with tanks and artillery and so on. So I suppose that this area, these two towns, is going to collapse and fall very soon. Maybe even these days we're going to receive these updates. Maybe, and I'm sure that these towns is going to collapse, and we will discuss why very soon. Another important update came today from north, from Verkhnekamensk. Also, few resources confirmed and reported that Ukrainians, under the pressure of the Russians from the north, from the east, and so on, decided to leave Verkhnekamensk, and now they have controlled just Seversk on this bridgehead. And I suppose if Verkhnekamensk is going to fall, if the Ukrainians left this town, I suppose that there is no reason and there is no possibility to keep Ivano-Daryevka anymore, because from now on the Russians will be able to attack this bridgehead between Vyimka and Ivano-Daryevka from the north, from the west, from the east, and from the south, because as we know, Sporna and Berestova is already under the Russians. The Russians took control over this town a long time ago. So I suppose that Ivanodarivka and Vimka is going to fall as well. Now let's talk about important update from this area, and this update is not connected with the battles on the ground. The Ukrainian authorities decided to start forced evacuation of civilians from this area. If you know, during the previous months there was evacuation as well, but it wasn't a forced evacuation. So that means that everybody who wants to stay on these territories, they can stand. But from now on, the Ukrainians decided to move the citizens from this area. And according to information they provided, they are talking about Donetsk district, Donetsk region. Donetsk region, let's calculate just to show you the area we are talking about. This is Donetsk district. So this is the border. So the area between this red territory and this black arrow is Donetsk district. And there are around 220,000 of people. I'm not talking about the soldiers, it's just civilians. And there are around, among these 220,000, around 60,000 of children. And the Ukrainians decided to evacuate this force. Of course, we understand why, because we understand that, of course, territory is very important, but what are you going to do with the territory if there is no people there? So we understand the Ukrainians' position, but I suppose, and I don't think that this evacuation is going to go very smooth, because if we are talking, we discussed the situation yesterday, as far as I remember, maybe with the patrons, I'm sorry, that, for example, to rent apartments somewhere in the east, on the west of Ukraine, to rent apartment for a month cost around 20,000 grivny. 20,000 grivny. Grivny is the local currency, and the currency exchange rate is around. So it's we can say that it's around $300 per month. Imagine yourself to rent apartment for $300 if there is no salary and no job at all, and that this west of Ukraine is totally filled with the Ukrainians from other regions. So I suppose that these people, for them, it's better to stay home on their houses. So now let's talk about this evacuation. Of course, the main reason of this evacuation, the Ukrainians understand that they won't be able to keep these territories. They will have to leave this area, so that's why they need to take people, and and of course the biggest pressure in this area is children. The future of Ukraine, not just of Ukraine, the future of these territories, these 60,000 people, children, they will grow up, they will get their specialty, they will become police officers, doctors, they will become IT engineers. It's the future. And of course, the Ukrainians want to get this future from this territory and to, let's say, like, to not to give the future for the Russians on this area, because without children, without people, there is no reason to keep this area. So I'm not sure, and I don't know how the Ukrainians are going to evacuate. I suppose that there are going to be some barriers from the locals. I don't think that anybody wants to leave his home. It's ridiculous, and furthermore, we understand that these people already know how people in Ukraine lives in the West and so on, and how it's difficult to start your life from the beginning. And maybe a lot of them thinks that maybe it's better to start to live with the Russians, but to stay in your home. And we can understand them. They don't care about if it's the Russians or if the Ukrainians. The most important for them is to keep their home, and it's a very populated area. So let's see and let's follow. So because of this evacuation, I suppose that Ukrainians are going to leave this area totally. And as we discussed yesterday, that Ukrainians maybe are going to surrender in the next 4 weeks. Maybe this is the reason why they decided to do this evacuation as well. Maybe it's some kind of speculation. So let's see and let's wait a little bit. Now let's talk about Donetsk. There are very heavy clashes, and today we got first confirmation of the fact that the Russians got some significant success in this area, and the most important thing, that the Russians entered Krasnogorovka. They passed these blue lines, these blue trenches, and they entered the east part of Krasnogorovka. There is battles in the town, and this is very important. Everything in Krasnogorovka happened as we discussed yesterday and while we were talking about the tactic on the ground. I'll remind you one more time. First, if you remember, the Russians attacked the small mine, this area. They established control over this area, and there was a confirmation report about that. By taking this area, the Russians did one important thing, and they established fire control. They established physical control over this road, and the Ukrainians in Krasnogorovka couldn't achieve any reinforcement from Marinka using this road. And from this road, they established also fire control over the road that moves on the west, this one. And some sources are saying that because of that fact, the force in Krasnogorovka was without any reinforcement. And if we're talking about north, this area, this territory between Pokrovsk, this territory was under very heavy shelling. The 1st President Brigade was destroyed in this area. In Yasna Brodovka was destroyed 110th Brigade. So I suppose that there were no just forces to move towards Krasnogorovka to help these forces. Furthermore, if you take a look at this area, if we're moving there any reinforcement, then any reinforcement should pass this bridge. And I suppose that this bridge was under fire control as well. It's not very far from the front line, just 5 kilometers, and there is also railroad that leads to this town, but anyway, this railroad is also has some bridge, and I suppose that this bridge was also on the fire control. So anyway, something happened with the reinforcing and with rotation in this area, so the Ukrainians just couldn't do anything. So that's why the Russians crossed these 2 kilometers, and I suppose that now they are somewhere here, and they established their position there. And the battle for Krasnogorovka has started, and I suppose that very soon entire area is going to collapse. And this is a very important area. This is the vital area for the Ukrainians, because let's just project the territory that the Russians can take, because we understand that it's much easier for the Russians to fight in towns than to cross these fields. And from this area, if the Russians took control over this territory, now the Russians are able to attack Peski from the back. Furthermore, the Russians are able to establish fire control over Kurakhova. This is very bad news for the Ukrainians, so I suppose that the operation of encirclement of Avdiivka has started, because by falling Krasnogorovka, the Russians are going to have some bridgehead, and from this area they will be able to develop their offensive operation in any direction. Another important updates are coming from the south, from this area. Today the Russians announced about taking some towns on the line of this area, but the DPR authorities, but as you can see, this map didn't show us any updates, but there are very heavy clashes on the south as well. I don't think that the Russians' main goal in this area to develop their to take control of new territories and so on. I think that the Russians are trying to fix the Ukrainians, because if you take a look at the map of this position, this south is well protected. There are a lot of tank brigade, 1st Tank Brigade, there is 53rd Mechanized Brigade, there is Motorized Brigade, and there's just battalions. So of course these forces are might be very useful on the north, and using these forces the Ukrainians can stop the Russians' offensive operation in Krasnogorovka, but these forces were fixed by the Russians, so I suppose that they don't have any possibilities to help the Ukrainians in this area. So as we can see, the battles develops very heavily and very fast. But there is not just, we can say, good news from the Russian sources for the Russians, there is also not very good news for the Russians and some good news for the Ukrainians. As you can see, the Russian sources map has been updated, and these updates are coming from Izum bridgehead, from this area. As you can see, this green line is the line that shows us the territory that was or is under the Russian control. But as you can see, the Russian source has moved the gray line, this one, you see this green line. And as you can see now, few towns like Velika Kamushuvacha, like Brashkovka, like Dibrova, this town, like Suligrovka, to be more precise, Dibrova and Velika Kamyshuvah is in the gray zone, because we know that territory that between the gray line and the green line is the territory of gray zone. So I suppose that Ukrainians are pushing the Russians in this area, and the Russians were forced maybe even to leave Velika Kamyshuvah, to leave Dibrova, and to leave. There was a lot of photo and video confirmation of destroyed tanks, and the Ukrainians are pushing. Maybe they did this a very long time ago and the Russians just decided to update this map for now, but it's a very interesting update, and I didn't expect that the Russians may be pushed from their bridgehead and may be pushed and they may be forced to leave Velika Kamyshuvah, because this is a very important town and I don't even understand what did happen, so they were forced to leave this area. So as you can see, the battles are developing very fast, and I suppose that very soon we're going to receive more and more events and updates on the front lines, on the battle on the front lines. So let's see and let's follow. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good weekend. Bye bye.